In 2025, Porsche's profit didn't dip. It fell 98% from over 5 billion euros to just 90 million. In China, once its biggest market on earth, it sold fewer cars than in its own home country of Germany, something that has essentially never happened. And Porsche can't just walk away because it bet everything on this. The Taycan wasn't supposed to be another car. It was supposed to be the future of the whole brand. 80% of every Porsche electric by 2030, the CEO promised. Today, they can barely move them off the lot, and the one model actually keeping Porsche alive isn't the electric future at all. It's the exact car they spent 5 years telling everyone was the past. Let's go back, because to understand how far this has fallen, you have to remember how high it was. For decades, Porsche wasn't just successful. It was the single most profitable car brand on the planet, measured per vehicle. In its best years, it ran operating margins near 18%, in an industry where 8% is considered healthy. It made more money on one Cayenne than most companies made on 10 cars. In 2022, Porsche did something almost no car maker dares to do. It went public, split off from Volkswagen, and for a brief, shining moment, it was worth more than the entire parent company that still owned most of it. The child became more valuable than the parent. That is how strong this brand was. And Porsche had survived everything: world wars, oil crises, recessions, the near bankruptcy of the early 1990s, which it came back from stronger than ever. While entire brands vanished around it, names like Saab, Pontiac, and Hummer disappeared completely. Porsche just kept getting stronger. If you wanted to bet on one car company on earth never failing, this was the one. It was the definition of a sure thing. So when Porsche made a big, confident bet on the future, the whole industry paid attention, because Porsche didn't make reckless moves. It made calculated ones. And around 2020, it placed the biggest bet in its history. It bet everything on electric. The pitch was beautiful. In 2019, Porsche launched the Taycan, its first fully electric car, and it wasn't a cautious experiment. It was a statement. Porsche was telling the world it could dominate the luxury EV the same way it had dominated sports cars for 70 years. Better build quality than Tesla, sharper handling, real luxury, and that crest on the hood that no startup could ever buy. Then it went further than almost any legacy brand dared. In 2021, the CEO announced the plan. By 2030, 80% of every Porsche sold would be fully electric. The Macan, the Cayenne, the Panamera, all of it going electric. Only the iconic 911 would stay gas, as the soul of the brand. Everything else would plug in. Porsche poured billions into this. Billions into EV factories. Billions into software and platforms. It partnered with a Swedish battery company called Northvolt that was supposed to supply the cells for the whole electric future. The roadmap was aggressive, fully funded, and completely confident. Porsche wasn't joining the EV race. It was trying to lead it. And at first, it looked like it was working. The Taycan won awards. In 2023, it sold around 40,000 units, which for a sedan starting above $90,000 was genuinely strong. Analysts called it the thinking person's Tesla. Porsche had apparently cracked the code every luxury brand was struggling with. It had built an electric car that felt like a real Porsche. The reservation lists looked healthy. Wall Street modeled Porsche as the one legacy name that would come out of the EV transition on top. The strategy looked watertight. But that's where the numbers stopped going up, because somewhere between the awards and the showroom, the demand started to evaporate, and Porsche did not seem to want to admit how fast. The first place it broke was China, and China is where this story turns. By 2021, China was Porsche's single largest market. Over 30% of every Porsche sold in the world went there, nearly 96,000 cars in a single year. Young, wealthy Chinese buyers loved German luxury, and Porsche sat at the very top of the status ladder. China wasn't just a market. It was the foundation of the whole plan. And then, almost overnight, Chinese buyers walked away. Not because of the economy. The Chinese car market was still buying plenty of cars. They just weren't buying Porsches anymore, because something fundamental had changed about what those buyers wanted. Local Chinese brands BYD, NIO, Xiaomi had launched electric cars that were genuinely more advanced than the Taycan and dramatically cheaper. The clearest example came from Xiaomi, a company most people knew as a phone maker. Its very first car, the SU7, outsold, out-teched, and on one Shanghai track even outlapped the Taycan. A phone company, on its first attempt, beat Porsche at the electric game. And the average Chinese EV buyer is around 36 years old and did not care about Porsche's century of racing heritage. Not even a little. To them, a car is a smartphone on wheels. They judge it on software, screens, charging speed, and self-driving. Think about how brutal that shift really is. For a century, the entire business model of a luxury brand rested on one idea. You pay a premium for the badge, for the history, for the story behind the machine. The story was the product. But a young buyer in Shanghai looks at a Taycan and a Xiaomi SU7 side by side, and the story doesn't move them. The screen does, the software does, and on every one of those, the Chinese car wins for half the money. Porsche spent 100 years building something an entire generation simply stopped valuing almost overnight. The numbers tell the whole brutal story. In 2024, Porsche's China sales fell hard. In 2025, they fell again, ending the year down more than 26%. And in the first half of 2026, they fell off a cliff, down 32% to just 14,500 cars. For the first time in memory, Porsche sold fewer cars in China than in Germany. The market that was supposed to be the foundation of the electric future had become the biggest hole in the ship. Then the car the whole strategy was built on started to fall apart too. The Taycan, the flagship of the electric plan, developed a reputation, and not a good one. Consumer Reports named it one of the least reliable vehicles of its year. Owners filled forums with horror stories. Red warning lights on the highway, system failures, multiple recalls. But the reliability nightmares weren't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem was simpler and harder to fix. On the numbers EV buyers actually care about, the Taycan just wasn't competitive anymore. A base Taycan cost nearly $90,000 for a few hundred kilometers of range, while a cheaper Tesla went nearly twice as far, and Chinese rivals went further still for half the money. So Porsche did the one thing it had never done in its history. It discounted. Hard. Dealers slashed tens of thousands off Taycans just to move them. And that quietly destroyed the one thing Porsche could never afford to lose, its premium image. Because the entire point of a Porsche is that it is not on sale. A Porsche is supposed to hold its value, to be the car you wait and save for. The second you start handing out huge discounts, you tell every owner and every future buyer that the car was never really worth what you charged. And this is exactly where the Cybertruck comparison writes itself, because Porsche just broke the same contract Tesla broke. The whole promise of a premium vehicle is that it protects your money. Those discounts crushed Taycan resale values, and the people who paid full price watched their cars lose value faster than almost anything in the luxury segment. Used Taycans have gone soft across the board, and analysts warn that if Porsche officially kills the nameplate, those values drop another 10 to 15% overnight. Imagine paying $100,000 for a Porsche and watching it bleed value like a phone from 3 generations ago. That is the opposite of everything the badge was supposed to mean, and buyers noticed. Nothing scares a luxury customer away faster than watching the last guy lose his shirt. Now, watch how fast the Taycan collapsed. In 2023, around 40,000 sold. In 2025, just 16,300. And in the first half of 2026, it fell another 25%, down to barely 6,000 units globally. Some Chinese dealers reported selling 1 or 2 Taycans a month. The car that was supposed to be the future was selling in numbers a single popular gas model does in a weekend. And Porsche is now openly weighing whether to merge the Taycan into the Panamera and quietly retire the name entirely. The flagship of the electric revolution may not survive to see 2028. Then the foundation under the entire plan gave way. Remember Northvolt, the Swedish battery company that was supposed to supply the cells for Porsche's electric future? In late 2024, Northvolt went bankrupt. Just like that, the battery supply at the center of the roadmap vanished. The new electric 718 sports car got pushed back years. Then Porsche shut down its own battery operation, laid off workers, and wrote off hundreds of millions in investment that would now never make a cent. The electric Macan arrived a year late because of software problems and cost far more than the gas version it was replacing. And then came the numbers that revealed the true scale of the disaster. Porsche's full-year 2025 operating profit collapsed 98%, from over 5 billion euros to just 90 million after nearly 5 billion euros in write-downs tied directly to its abandoned EV plan. Read that again. The most profitable car company on Earth per vehicle nearly stopped making a profit at all, and the reason was the electric bet. Porsche tried everything to stop the bleeding. It discounted the Taycan. It leaned on hybrids. It rushed a value-oriented edition into China to plug the gap. It kept the gas models it had promised to phase out alive far longer than planned. None of it turned the tide fast enough. So the retreat began, and it is now visible everywhere you look. Porsche quietly abandoned its single most important target, the 80% electric by 2030 goal, the centerpiece of the entire strategy. Gone. No new plan, no new date, just a vague promise to keep selling gas, hybrid, and electric for many years to come. It stopped making the combustion 718 in late 2025. It's stopping the gas Macan this July. It's cutting around 3,900 jobs. It shut down roughly 200 DC fast chargers it built in China at enormous expense. And it is slashing its Chinese dealer network almost in half, from around 150 locations down to about 80. This is not a company adjusting. This is a company shrinking. And the leadership itself has been in turmoil. Porsche fired its chief financial officer and its sales chief. It brought in a new CEO to steady the ship. The very people who steered the company into the electric bet were pushed out as the scale of the miss became undeniable. In a leaked letter to tens of thousands of German employees, the CEO said the quiet part out loud. Sales in China had hit historic lows. EV margins were far below gas. American tariffs, because every Porsche sold in the U.S. is imported from Europe, were piling on pressure. And then the line that made headlines around the world. The business model, he admitted, no longer works in a post-Trump new China world. So here's the picture in 2026. China cratering, the Taycan dying, the profit nearly gone, thousands of jobs cut, the EV dream officially abandoned, which brings us back to the promise I made you at the very start of this video. Because through all of it, one model, and only one, is actually growing, and it is the exact car Porsche spent 5 years telling everyone was the past. If you want to know which car is quietly keeping this entire company alive and why that fact should terrify every other luxury brand on Earth, now is the moment to hit that subscribe button and like this video, because what that one model reveals is something most people watching the Porsche story have completely missed. It's the 911, the gas-powered 70-year-old, the one they swore was the past, 911. In the U.S., 911 sales are up around 56% this year as buyers who wanted the now discontinued 718 Cayman and Boxster simply moved up to it instead. Globally, 911 deliveries rose nearly 20%, while almost every other model in the lineup fell, some of them by a third or more. The single-car Porsche, framed as the relic, the exception, the last holdout of the old world, is the one model actually growing. Every other Porsche is a story about decline. The 911 is the only one that isn't. And here's why that matters. A 911 is a high-margin car. Porsche makes serious money on every one it sells, so the model it deprioritized in every strategy deck is now doing double duty, propping up the volume and propping up the profit, while the electric cars the company bet everything on lose money and sit on lots. If the 911 were falling like the Taycan, this would not be a story about a rough patch. It would be a story about survival. Porsche bet its entire future on electric, and the thing saving it from disaster is the loud, gasoline-burning sports car it was slowly planning to phase out. The past is subsidizing the failed future. Now, let's give Porsche the fair argument, because this channel deals in facts, and there is a real bull case here that deserves to be heard. Porsche is not going bankrupt. Let me say that clearly, because the internet loves to skip that part. It still sells expensive cars at real margins on the models people actually want, the Cayenne and the 911. It has a new CEO and a turnaround plan it will reveal at its Capital Markets Day this October. And the strategy is obvious in hindsight. Build fewer cars, charge more for them, protect the badge, and stop pretending the whole lineup can go electric on a deadline the market never agreed to. The man now steering the company helped build the Cayenne and Macan programs that pulled Porsche out of near bankruptcy in the early 2000s. He has done this before. If any brand on earth can engineer its way out of this, it is this one. But here's the problem the bull case has to answer. The thing keeping Porsche alive right now, the 911, is a finite lifeline. There are only so many buyers moving up from the discontinued 718, and that bump fades. Meanwhile, the electric cars that are supposed to be the future are the ones losing money, and the tariffs and the China collapse aren't going away on any timeline Porsche controls. So Porsche is caught in a genuine corner. If it doubles down on gas and hybrids to chase the profit, it falls further behind on the electric technology the whole world is still moving toward. If it doubles down on electric, it keeps losing money in a segment where a phone company already out-engineered it. There is no comfortable door. So the Porsche story is not just a Porsche story, it is a story about what happens when the most confident, best-funded, most prestigious brand in the entire industry bets everything on a future the market wasn't ready to buy on the timeline it promised. Because Porsche was supposed to be the proof that a legacy brand with enough money, enough engineering, and enough heritage could win the electric transition on its own terms. Mercedes watched it. BMW watched it. Audi watched it. They all pointed at Porsche and said, if anyone can do this, they can. Instead, Porsche became the warning. And every executive at every one of those companies is now looking at these numbers and asking the same terrifying question. If it happened to Porsche, with everything it had going for it, what exactly is protecting us? Ford killed the Lightning when the math stopped working. Tesla propped up the Cybertruck with its CEO's other companies. And Porsche, the untouchable one, the sure thing, is being kept alive by the exact car it spent 5 years telling everyone was finished. The most profitable car brand in the world bet the house on electric. The market said no, and the only thing that saved it was the past it was trying to leave behind. The uncomfortable truth underneath all of this is that Porsche didn't fail because it built bad cars. That's what makes it such a chilling story. The Taycan is, by most accounts, a genuinely brilliant machine to drive. The engineering was there. The build quality was there. The problem was that Porsche misread the single most important thing a company can misread, what its customers would actually want and when. It looked at the future, saw electric, and sprinted toward it faster than anyone. And it turned out the finish line kept moving. The buyers in China wanted software and screens, not heritage. The buyers in America wanted the tax credit that vanished and balked at the tariffs that didn't. And the buyers everywhere who could afford a six-figure Porsche mostly still wanted the one that makes noise. Porsche answered a question the market was no longer asking, and it spent 5 billion euros doing it. And that is the part every other carmaker is terrified of, because it means being good at building cars is no longer enough. For 100 years, the winners in this industry were the companies with the best engineering and the strongest brands. Porsche had both in abundance, and it still got caught flat-footed by a phone company and a shifting deadline. The lesson isn't that electric was a mistake. Electric is still coming. The lesson is that betting the entire house on exactly when and how it arrives is a gamble even the most powerful brand on earth can lose. Porsche will probably survive this because it has the 911, the Cayenne, and a century of knowing how to reinvent itself. But it will come out the other side smaller, humbler, and carrying a warning label for everyone else. The untouchable brand just proved that nobody is untouchable. And if you're one of its rivals watching this unfold, that isn't reassuring. That's the scariest thing you've seen all year. So where do you land on this? Is Porsche going to claw its way back with the 911 and a smarter, slower EV plan? Or is this the beginning of a much bigger reckoning for every legacy luxury brand that bet the house on electric? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. If you got something out of this, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the next chapter of this story, Porsche's turnaround plan, drops this fall, and we'll be here to break down every number of it. See you in the next one.